This is one of the most dysfunctional families online.
I'm going home to my sweet children. I cannot wait to hug them and to smell them and to...
And with Ruby Franke, the mother, at the helm of things, child neglect and manipulation is commonplace.
Have been a masterful manipulator.
Her manipulation goes as far as threatening to starve the kids, and then eventually goes ahead to starve them. So when it comes to bad parenting, Ruby is the master at it.
Do you know what mating is?
Yeah.
Do you want to learn?
What about hate on a certain group of people?
LGBTQ. And I think there's 9 now. Plus. It's another of these movements that are going on in our world that is divisive.
This is a story that will touch your heart. A story that made its way to national TV. The story of Ruby Franke. How she aligned herself with a dangerous cult leader, and how it ended up being her doom. When people talk about 8 passengers, the first name that pops up is Ruby Franke, and that's because she was the one running the show. Ruby, a mom of 6 from Utah, started the 8 Passengers YouTube channel in early 2015 to share her family's everyday life. Not long after, she also set up an Instagram page to keep the updates going there too. Her first Instagram post came in June 2015, a sweet photo of her daughter Eve, who looked like she was about 2 to 3 years old at the time. The next day, she shared a post about how well her YouTube channel was going. At that point, she had 888 subscribers and was clearly excited. She captioned it, "Check it out, 888 subscribers. When I went to China in 2012, I learned that the number 8 is very lucky. It must be our lucky day." Maybe that lucky number 8 had a bigger meaning for Ruby than just being cool. It might be why she thought it was the perfect name for their channel. After all, there were 8 of them. Ruby, her husband, and their 6 kids. It just felt right. But fast forward to today, and that once popular channel is gone. 8 Passengers has completely disappeared from YouTube after it was taken down. We'll get into all the drama behind that later. Quick little detour. Ever wondered why the number 8 is considered lucky in China? Well, according to a source, it's all about how it sounds. In Mandarin, the word for 8 is ba, and it sounds a lot like fa, which means wealth or prosperity. Because of that, people started linking the number 8 with good luck, money, and success. No wonder Ruby was so excited about those 888 subscribers. Back to the main story. At first, Ruby's new YouTube channel didn't blow up overnight. Things were moving pretty slowly. She then came up with a way to draw more attention to her channel. At the time, she was just about to hit 10,000 subscribers. So in November 2015, she posted on Instagram with an exciting caption, "You helped us reach 10,000 subscribers. To show our thanks, we are announcing a big giveaway." It was a smart move. Who doesn't love free stuff? By January 2016, things really started to pick up. Ruby was gaining about 350 new subscribers every day and had already reached around 32,000 subscribers within her first year. As the fame grew, she decided to expand her presence even more by launching a Facebook page. And of course, she proudly shared the news with her Instagram followers. Maybe that lucky number 8 was already working its magic. Either way, Ruby kept going strong, posting video after video about her family's daily life.
The morning of a trip, we like to be nice and slow and quiet.
Well, believe it or not, there are people out there who actually sit and watch these videos for fun. Personally, a lot of it feels pretty cringy to me, just to be honest. But let's look at it from another standpoint. Raising 6 kids in today's economy isn't exactly easy. So maybe that's why even her husband was on board with the whole thing. Sometimes making ends meet means doing things you never thought you'd do, like turning your family life into content.
Calmness.
And honestly, that's not how a reasonable parent should be waking up their kids. These are the kinds of things kids might do. Running around, being loud, playing rough, and it's the parent's job to step in, set boundaries, and calm things down. But instead, we see Ruby doing the same things just to get views, all for content. Still, her channel kept growing. A big reason for that was the support she got from her extended family. Her sisters Ellie Meckham, Bonnie Holeen, Julie Deru, and others. They were also running family YouTube channels and often featured each other, which helped Ruby gain even more followers. But when things started falling apart for Ruby, those same people who once boosted her turned their backs on her.
I am not my sister. I am not my sister's mistakes.
So how did it all go wrong? We'll be looking into all of that in the next few parts of the video. But before we go any further, let's get to know the family a bit better just to make everything clear as we move along. We already know Ruby, the mom and the face of the channel. Her husband is Kevin Franke, whom she married back in 2000 after they met as students at Brigham Young University. Together they had 6 kids. First is Shari, born in 2003. Then came Chad in 2005, followed by Abby in 2007, Julie in 2009, Russell in 2011, and finally the youngest, Eve, born in 2013. A full house and the 8 behind 8 passengers. Over the next few years, 8 passengers turned into a viral sensation. By 2020, the channel had racked up around 2.5 million subscribers and crossed over 1 billion views. But as we all know, with big numbers and big attention come big controversies. So now let's dive into some of the most shocking and talked about controversies this family has faced over the years. Let's check out some of the weirdest moments caught on camera, where there is a lot of questionable parenting coming from Ruby.
Eve, did you kiss him, or Boston, did you kiss her?
In the video, it looked like Ruby found it amusing that her youngest daughter, Eve, was kissing her cousin. Now, I know people might have different opinions on this, but honestly, this is how those cousin-to-cousin intimacies start. Sure, it might seem harmless when they're little, but I personally think it's something parents should gently discourage. Kids copy what they see, and it's the adult's job to set boundaries early on. What do you think, though? Is it okay to let stuff like that slide at home, or should it be addressed right away?
If you cut one more thing in my house, I'm going to take the scissors, look at me, and I'm going to cut its head off.
Yes, there's nothing wrong with correcting a child when they're being destructive. That's what kids do, and it's a parent's job to guide them. But when you start using traumatic threats to get your message across, that's where things get dangerous. It can mess with the child's mind. They might grow up thinking that threats are a normal way to deal with problems. And sadly, those are often the same kids who take that behavior to school, become bullies, acting out or hurting others. We've seen it time and time again. Many bullies come from homes where fear and dysfunction are part of daily life. Just look at Eve's reaction in that clip. She looked scared, not corrected.
And I'm going to cut its head off.
According to research published by the National Library of Medicine, a dysfunctional family environment is associated with the onset of episodes of anxiety, aggressiveness, and impulsivity in children, impairing their ability to develop conflict resolution tactics with their peers and putting them at greater risk of displaying violent, aggressive, and bullying behaviors outside the home environment.
Give me some breakfast.
You don't need food.
Just look at the kid's face. This isn't something that should be used for content. By this point, Ruby had already gained hundreds of thousands of subscribers on her YouTube channel and was making money off her family's daily life.
And I'm telling you, I was making millions. And I left.
But starving her kids just to get a reaction for the camera? That's beyond cruel. And the sad part is, this wasn't a one-time thing. Using fear, guilt, and manipulation seemed to be her method for parenting and in creating content.
You can't come in the kitchen and take whatever you want, whenever you want. Are you hungry?
Yeah.
Are you growing boy? Is that why you keep getting into the kitchen?
Yeah.
What happened here is just heartbreaking. The poor kid was so hungry, he had to sneak into the kitchen just to find something to eat. Ruby seemed to be expecting it. She had her phone camera ready, like she was waiting to catch him in the act, all for content. What kind of mother does that? It's hard to understand how someone could be so comfortable putting their own child through that just to get views.
I will feed you a very good lunch, but you have got to promise to stay out of the kitchen. Do you understand?
Yeah.
The kid would most likely not go into the kitchen if he were not starving. Most kids don't even want to cook or do anything to get food on their own. They would prefer it be brought to the dining table ready for them to eat.
Lunch is in 1 hour. I think you're cute when you're sad.
No.
The poor hungry kid had to wait another whole hour before he could eat. There wasn't anything in the fridge she could have given him in the meantime, a snack, some fruit, anything. And what kind of mother looks at a sad, upset child and thinks it's cute? It's like she wanted them to stay unhappy, just so she could capture those moments on camera. It's hard to watch, and even harder to understand how a parent could think this kind of behavior is okay. A lot of people in the comments section shared this sentiment. One user said, "Poor little thing, he was hungry and distraught, and she stuck a camera in his face. I want to hug that little boy, this breaks my heart." Another commenter described Ruby perfectly, saying, "An abusive mother blames and shames her child for eating food. Sick and psychopathic. Her tone of voice is psychotically controlling. This person is absolutely right. What kind of mother would say something like that to her son?"
You, Chad, I'm really glad you're home. Our house is so much better with you here. But there's one part of me that really hates that you're here.
This is one of the big reasons why some people believe the kids aren't safe with Ruby. Sure, some might say it's just for content, but there's always something deeper going on. The way she talks sometimes, it feels like she's subconsciously fed up with having so many kids around, and maybe she doesn't even realize it. But still, as an adult and a parent, she should have thought about all this before choosing to have 6 kids. Being overwhelmed is one thing, but taking it out on your children and using it for views, that's something else entirely. For those who are wondering if her husband was in on all this behavior, here is a clip of her being unreasonable while he sits there just nodding his bald head in agreement.
Controversial experience that when I share it, people are kind of like, what? But we had a child who was showing up dishonest, irresponsible, not humble in the home. Dishonest, irresponsible, not humble at school. Dishonest, irresponsible, not humble at peers' homes.
Whose fault is it that your child is acting this way? Most kids reflect what they see at home. The love, the attention, or sometimes the lack of it. When a child starts acting irresponsible or a bit chaotic, like Ruby described, it's often just their way of showing frustration or confusion about what's going on around them. They don't always have the words, so their actions speak for them. So what was Ruby trying to prove by bringing this up? Instead of helping her child, it felt more like she was blaming them. And for what?
But there was one place he always showed up, and that was at his sport of choice, football. And he did exactly what the coaches said. If the coaches told him to do something, he'd do it, and he'd do it extra. If he saw teammates who were...
Wait, what? That's the one thing he needs to get rid of? Seriously? That's coming from someone who claims to be this kid's mother. The so-called chaotic child finally finds peace and joy in football, a space where he's supported, appreciated, and maybe even feels truly loved. And that's the thing Ruby wants to take away from him? Why? Is it jealousy? Is she upset that he's getting from the field what he's missing at home? It's hard to believe she actually said that out loud on camera like it made perfect sense. And now here comes her so-called reason for wanting to take football away from her own son.
We need to get rid of it because he's being compartmentalized and he's manipulated, because obviously he knows how to show up responsible because he's showing up responsible. He just doesn't want to show up responsible at home. He doesn't want to show up responsible at school. He's not willing to be honest, responsible, and humble for his thoughts, his feelings, and his choices everywhere else. He's just doing what he wants. And he just happened to want to be above and beyond at football. Why? Because that's where he was getting his worth.
Yep.
And so when we took away football, we took away his worth. That's what.
So let's get this straight. Just because he's showing responsibility on the field, Ruby decides that must mean he's being manipulated? That he's only acting that way because it's not who he truly is? And her solution? Take him away from the one place where he's actually thriving. That's unbelievably negative. Instead of seeing this as a turning point, a chance for him to build confidence and maybe start turning things around in other parts of his life, she chooses to shut it down. If something brings a kid happiness and purpose, shouldn't a parent encourage that? Not to tear it away? According to a doctor, it's an opportunity for them to see how hard work can help them overcome challenges. When Ruby took the football away from her kid, she denied him the opportunity to improve. All he's going to get is a camera in his face on a daily basis. But do these kids even enjoy being filmed by their mother?
Can you not film it?
So I just want...
Ruby pretended like her daughter was okay with being filmed, but you could tell she wasn't. Stuff like this can get annoying. That kind of constant exposure can really take a toll on a kid. Worse still, it opens that up to being teased or bullied by other kids at school or in the neighborhood because of what's been shared online. And Ruby doesn't seem to care. As long as the camera's rolling and the views keep coming, her kid's comfort takes a back seat.
So I just
She just got rejected.
She has no idea what I'm gonna say. She's like thinking, she's conjuring up the worst things in her head.
Because it probably is gonna be the worst things in my head.
I can't even imagine what they're going through. You could see it all over her face, the tension, the nerves. The moment her mom was about to ask that question, she looked so uncomfortable, like she wanted to disappear.
And Julie has been asking all summer if she can shave her legs and armpits, and
I never said that. I don't want to.
You don't?
No. Julie, you should shave your armpits.
I think your armpits...
I really admire Julie for having the courage to say that to her face. When you're constantly posting content without putting real thought or creativity into it, you eventually hit a wall. And that's when the lies start creeping in just to keep people interested. By this point, even her own kids didn't seem to respect her content anymore. In the beginning, they used to go along with the manipulation and the fake moments, but now they're clearly over it. But what really bothers me is why she felt the need to announce to the world that her daughter wanted to shave a particular part of her body. What was the point of that? Who was she trying to appeal to? Because that kind of content only attracts the wrong kind of attention and the wrong type of people.
Julie, you should shave your armpits.
I think your armpits need to be shaved more than your legs do.
When you start speaking, when you start getting BO.
These are the kinds of things that should stay within the family. Private moments, not internet content. Posting something so personal is wrong. Imagine how Julie must have felt if her friends saw that video and started teasing her, calling her hairy or making fun of her. And let's not pretend her age mates don't have phones. Of course they do. Kids these days are online and they see everything. What makes it even worse is that despite having a mom who's making good money from YouTube, a lot of these kids still don't seem to have access to basic things at home. It's like they're living in the spotlight for everyone else's entertainment. But behind the scenes, their real needs are being ignored.
Everything that comes into this house belongs to who?
Yeah.
Belongs to me.
Sure, she's right. She owns the house and everything in it. But why does that need to be turned into some kind of power move right in front of her kids?
Everything that comes into this house belongs to who?
Yeah.
Belongs to me.
They don't really have a choice. They're forced to live under her strict, almost military-style control. Ruby constantly reminds them that everything they have, everything they are, and anything they could ever hope for comes from her. She uses that as a way to keep them in line, and it's heartbreaking. That mindset explains a lot, including why she could be so cruel as to not even let her own son sleep comfortably in the house.
My bedroom was taken away for 7 months, and then you give it back like a couple weeks ago.
I don't think our viewers know that.
You've been sleeping on a beanbag.
I've been sleeping on a beanbag since October, and they gave my room back like 2 weeks ago. Oh, I'll give you the reason why I lost my bedroom.
He genuinely sounded depressed talking about it. But what's shocking is that Ruby found it funny that her son had no bed to sleep on for over 6 months. What could he have possibly done that was so terrible it justified making him sleep on a beanbag on the floor, not even the couch for that long? Eventually, like a lot of people who try to laugh through their pain, Chad decided to talk a bit more about the experience and even smiled while doing it. But that clearly upset Ruby. She didn't expect him to come out of it smiling or making light of it. It was almost like she wanted him to stay ashamed or broken by it.
You think it's funny because...
And then I walk out.
If you think it's funny, then that was 7 months ago. Maybe you need longer without a bedroom.
It was not funny.
You think it's funny because...
And then I walk out.
If you think it's funny, then that was 7 months ago. Maybe you need longer without a bedroom.
It was not funny.
I honestly believe Ruby is naturally cruel. A lot of what she says doesn't even seem like it's for content. She genuinely believes her way of parenting is the right way. And it's not just with the older kids. She treated her young baby boy the same way. At one point, the little boy was sick and throwing up from whatever illness he had. Most reasonable parents would comfort their child, hold them close, and do whatever they could to make them feel comfortable. But Ruby, she thought the best thing to do was to send him to the toilet, as if that was the right place for a sick child to be.
We're gonna put a pillow and a blanket by the toilet, and you can camp out in the bathroom, okay?
She actually put a pillow and a blanket inside the box, like that somehow made it okay, so that whenever her sick little boy felt the urge to vomit, he could just do it in the right place. To Ruby, the idea of him camping out in the toilet overnight seemed completely normal, even uplifting. But this is just a child. And you could see how confused and overwhelmed he was, trying to understand why his own mother thought this was the right way to take care of him. It's heartbreaking. For those who are asking, she actually went through with it.
I love you, Russell.
Good night, Mom.
Good night.
Can you just close the door just a little though?
Sure.
And then there's the issue Ruby had with Eve's teacher at school for simply asking what any reasonable parent should do for their kid.
I just got a text message from Eve's teacher, and she said that Eve did not pack a lunch today, and can I bring a lunch over to the school? This happens quite often when you're raising children, because I know that her teacher is uncomfortable with her being hungry and not having a lunch.
Should the teacher really be the one feeling uncomfortable that Eve didn't have any food, or should that responsibility fall on Ruby, her mother? The teacher was most likely just looking out for her students' well-being, as any caring teacher would. It's hard to focus when all the other kids are eating and one child is sitting there hungry. That's embarrassing, and it can seriously affect a kid's ability to pay attention and learn. A parent should never let it get to that point. According to the official food bank website, school breakfasts and lunches are crucial for student health and well-being, but they also have significant benefits for learning and academic performance. Good nutrition supports optimal brain function and focus, providing students with the best opportunity to succeed.
I responded and just said, Eve is responsible for making her lunches in the morning, and she actually told me she did pack a lunch.
What planet is Ruby even living on? Everything we're seeing, all these situations are actually happening to our kids. And honestly, at this point, it doesn't even matter whether she's doing it all for content or if she truly believes this is good parenting. I mean, on what part of this planet is it okay for a 4 or 5-year-old to be fully responsible for making their own breakfast? Seriously, is there anywhere in the world where that's considered normal or acceptable? If so, someone please let me know, because this isn't right.
So the natural outcome is she's just going to need to be hungry. And hopefully nobody gives her food and nobody steps in and gives her.
The only natural and fair outcome at this point is that Ruby should not be allowed anywhere near the responsibility of raising kids. Just look at the straight face she had while casually talking about how her daughter would go the whole school day without food, like it was nothing. And there's a chance there might not even be food waiting for her at home either. This isn't some isolated moment. We've seen this happen again and again. Her kids not being able to find anything to eat at home.
Food with you, I don't think you're going to be able to eat. But if you're not responsible for your lunch and your lunch money, that's the natural consequence. And I'm really sorry you're learning this the hard way.
Sometimes Ruby's behavior gets so extreme that it makes you stop and wonder if this is even real. Because honestly, how can someone be this cruel? Maybe she wasn't always like this. Maybe over time she started doing whatever it took to keep people watching, even if it meant crossing every line just for more engagement. But even if that's true, it's no excuse. She went on to describe the nice meals she would be having while casually hoping her son's friends would be kind enough to share their food with him, all because he forgot to grab his breakfast before school.
Just hang in there today and just make up your mind you're going to be really careful and make sure you grab your stuff when you go to school next time. And maybe you have a good friend who will share some of their sandwich with you or something. Russell, I'm really sorry. He sounded like he was going to...
After being so harsh with him, what exactly did she expect? A smile? Of course, he sounded like he was about to cry. Who wouldn't be in that situation? It's just heartbreaking that he ended up with a mother this crazy. The kind of mother who would say something so cold and still act like it's okay.
Eve, she was 6 years old at the time, and she was saying her prayers, and she said the cutest thing. I thought it was so cute, and I started laughing. She said, "Dear Heavenly Father, please help me to survive." And I thought it was so cute.
Kids are innocent, and no matter what challenges they go through, they always find a way to adapt. Little Eve's prayer gave us a glimpse into the kind of treatment she and her siblings were dealing with. And instead of being concerned, Ruby thought it was cute. But who knows, maybe Eve's prayer was actually hard, because the struggles Ruby would face in the years that followed became a national topic. We'll talk about that more later in the video. Someone described Ruby accurately by saying, "This is not a human. This is a monster. Worst power-hungry control freak manipulator I've ever seen." Another user named Princess claimed that prayer was a call for help and was sad to hear. She commented, "Dear Heavenly Father, please help me survive. Is so sickening to hear, especially knowing her mother thought it was cute. I can't believe I used to watch these people when I was younger, so oblivious to the abuse. Those poor, poor babies. I hope they'll be able to find peace." Even when it comes to punishment for unconventional bad behavior, Ruby makes it weird and does outrageous things to her kids.
The youngest are showing long patterns of selfishness. They have been showing, through their choices, their unwillingness to repent, their unwillingness to feel sorrow over some pretty egregious choices that they've made. So
Eve and Russell, who were both under 8 years old at the time, were accused of being selfish to Ruby, and she had prepared a befitting punishment for them. Not immediately, but sometime in the future.
So Kevin and I have decided that we are going to give the gift of truth to them this year for Christmas. We are going to give them the gift of boundaries, and we're going to give them the gift of repentance.
He just laid it out very clear. And we told them that this year they are not going to be visited by Santa.
Imagine being a kid and thinking the upcoming holidays, a time that's supposed to be full of joy and excitement, will be a time of punishment and torment from your parents. That kind of approach is too harsh and damaging. Delaying punishment like that can mess with a child's mind. From the moment it's announced until Christmas arrives, they're stuck in constant worry. Instead of looking forward to the holiday, they're haunted by the thought of a miserable Christmas, while their siblings get to enjoy all the fun.
What I did was I went around the house, and I have
pouring them away.
Yes.
That's my homework.
Whoa, whoa. Oh, whoa.
Homework. I need that to turn that in tomorrow. No, I'm serious. That's like half my grade right now.
It really seems like Ruby is the one running the show at home. Because why would her husband just sit back while all of this is happening to their kids? Most time when he's in the videos and something messed up goes down, he just sits there, nods his head, or acts like nothing's wrong. He's either checked out or just going along with whatever Ruby says. And then to top it off, she makes this big announcement, on camera of course, telling the kids what they have to do if they ever want their cherished or important stuff back.
If you have something in the bag that you would like out, you can pay cash for it. So you learn the value of your item.
I'm just as shocked as her kids were. This has to be a joke, right? Or maybe some ridiculous stunt for the camera, because it feels more like extortion than parenting. We've seen Ruby in so many videos brag about owning everything in the house, reminding the kids that nothing belongs to them unless she says so. And now she's making them pay to get back something she knows means a lot to them at that moment. This is the point where her husband should have stepped in, said something, done something. He actually did, and this is what he had to say about the criticism.
And whatever isn't claimed by the end of the day goes in the garbage.
What a useless man. Whether they're doing this for fun or they believe it's right, it's completely unacceptable to put their kids through this. Honestly, Kevin is just as guilty as she is. If he were even slightly reasonable, he could have been the voice of reason in that household. As an adult, as a father, he had the chance to step in and say, this isn't okay. But he didn't. And maybe if he had pushed back more, Ruby wouldn't have gone this far with the kids. Ruby even went as far as tongue-lashing her kids, whatever that means.
Just use your imagination. It was bad.
This is just disgusting. We don't need to imagine too much to figure out the disturbing thing she claimed she was doing with her daughter. For more clarity, here's what she meant.
I'm going home to my sweet children. I cannot wait to hug them and just smell them and to lick them.
You see now that I'm not exaggerating when I say she's mentally unwell, and that's just as a person, not to mention being mentally fit to raise kids. Just think about it. What kind of mother punishes her kids by licking them all over their bodies like some kind of animal? Whether it was meant as discipline, humiliation, or for some other bizarre reason, it's disturbing to think about.
Lashing very well.
How is that a nice thing to say about a kid? Such a pathetic psycho. This crazy woman punished her child for forgetting his socks outside by making him go pick them up himself.
One.
Put your hands straight out. They're in. They're not supposed to be out. Shape your hands forward. There you go. 1, 2, down further. Bring your butt down.
It feels like she punishes them for the slightest reason or mistake. This is the reality for these poor kids. And then there are times when Ruby had talked about getting rid of the children.
You want me to send you away?
Is there ever a time when it's okay to talk about getting rid of your own child? Especially right in front of them, whether you're joking or not? The answer is no, absolutely not. But apparently Ruby thought it was funny to say things like that. And if it had only happened once, maybe people would brush it off. But this wasn't a one-time slip. She's made similar comments multiple times. And then there's the way she casually goes out to enjoy herself, leaving the kids behind with barely anything to rely on.
Sometimes I have to neglect the kids. I'm gonna go see Despicable Me 3, but before we do, I'm gonna make sure these kids have something good to eat. So, Boston, get in line.
I'm first.
Everyone get in line. Here we go. You get back there.
So we're gonna go.
I love that I can talk to my nephews that way. Get in line. Now go back to the back of the line.
Oh, sure, a single bite of banana. That should totally hold a kid over for hours while they're out and about. What a loving and thoughtful mother Ruby is, right? It's almost laughable if it weren't so sad. And then there are those moments when the youngest, the baby of the house, Eve, surprises everyone with her brutally honest reactions to Ruby's nonsense. Even at that age, she could see through the shenanigans.
Shh. The fact that I yell at my kids is a secret. We don't want our viewers to know.
Eve, always the brave little girl. It's inspiring how she speaks up, even in the smallest ways, especially in a home where the kids are often left feeling sad and possibly even depressed by Ruby's aggressive approach to parenting. And Ruby seems happy with their unhappiness, like she enjoyed it when her kids weren't smiling. But when you rule with fear instead of love, what else can you expect?
And she said, Mom, I'm sad. I was like, that's awesome.
And what did Ruby do when Eve came to her around 2 a.m. for bedwetting for the first time in months?
Shh. The fact that I yell at my kids is a secret. We don't want our viewers to know.
Something that Ruby says for content might be taken in and internalized by the kids. This can negatively impact how they behave in the future. Take this video, for example.
What is it? What?
Does it even matter? If someone asked me if I wanted to go to a movie, I wouldn't ask, what is it? Run and get your shoes or you're gonna not go. Hurry!
Imagine telling kids it's totally fine to go watch a movie with someone without asking any questions. That kind of advice is careless and dangerous. A stranger could easily use the same approach. Maybe offer them candy or a fun time. And because of what their mother taught them, they might think it's okay to just follow along without thinking twice. No questions, no hesitation. It's a setup for something bad. And it shows just how reckless and out of touch Ruby's parenting can be. And let's not pretend Ruby doesn't know what she's doing, or that she's clueless about what her kids need. That's simply not true. She often asks them what they want, what they need, and she knows. She just chooses not to listen.
You tell me what you're feeling.
Mad.
Mad?
Because I really won't get anything this summer. I won't be able to go anywhere. No, I don't have any friends. No iPads, no TV.
Those poor kids had nothing to look forward to during this summer. And Ruby didn't even seem ashamed that her child was in such a depressing state of mind. No friends, no plans, just isolation. But how could he have friends when his entire life was being broadcast online? He was probably seen as the weird kid, the one whose every move was shared for the world to see. People were rightfully frustrated by all this. Viewers started showing up on her page, not to support, but to criticize her, to call out the way she was treating her children. And how did Ruby respond to all the backlash? Well, here's what she had to say.
And because they've never been loved before, it looks like I'm angry. To them, it looks like I'm controlling. It looks like I'm militant. It looks like I'm a monster. It looks like I'm mean. It looks like I'm full of hate. It looks like I'm not accepting it because they don't know what love looks like.
I honestly think Ruby has a completely twisted idea of what love is. What she's doing to her kids goes far beyond anything you would call tough love. The problem is none of it seems to come from a place of genuine care or concern for their well-being. It's all about her. Her image, her control, her version of what she thinks is right. And somehow in her mind, that's what love looks like. But real love isn't about control or intense punishment. It's about understanding, support, and putting your kids first. Something Ruby clearly struggles to understand.
This is what love sounds like. When you see someone hurting, you acknowledge the hurt. If your kid came to you on fire, would you say, "I'm so glad you trusted me to tell me you're on fire. But if I put out the fire, that's going to really hurt and you're going to end up with scabs anyway. So I'm just going to love you where you are right now." No, you throw them on the ground and you start rolling them. You get a blanket and you start hitting the flames. And they're going to say, "You're hurting me. You're beating me."
This woman is honestly not okay in the head. I get her point about making hard choices for the sake of a child's future. Sure, sometimes parenting is tough. But that example she gave about a kid being on fire? That was way over the top. And even if we play along with her wild analogy, if a child is literally on fire, the right thing to do is grab water or a fire extinguisher and put it out. You don't slam your kid to the ground and start beating the flames off them. That would just cause even more pain and injury. So no, her example doesn't make her look like a strong parent. It just shows how extreme and harmful her mindset is.
"You're hurting me. You're beating me. You're controlling." It's like, "No, dear, hold still. I'm getting the fire out." That's what a loving parent does. Because nobody will do it. It looks to the world crazy.
It doesn't only sound crazy, it is crazy. You can't seriously talk about a child being on fire and then say your solution is to grab a blanket, something flammable, and start beating the flames out of them. That's making things worse. And if she's not careful, that fire she's trying to put out could spread and end up burning her too. The whole analogy falls apart, just like her logic. The same logic that got Chad missing. This so-called tough love was the same approach she used with Chad when he suddenly disappeared from their videos for a while. During that time, fans started noticing that Chad was missing and began asking questions. Eventually, Ruby and Kevin decided to address it by making a video to explain what had happened, or at least give their version of the story.
Okay, so you're probably wondering what the heck we're talking about. Chad today has just entered the Anasazi Foundation Wilderness Therapy Program, where he's going to spend the next 8 to 10 weeks living in the
Anasazi Desert.
Yeah, the desert mountains of Arizona.
But why would they do that to Chad? What could he have possibly done that made them think sending him off to the Arizona desert was the solution? Around 2020, Ruby and Kevin Franke made the decision to send Chad to a wilderness therapy program in the remote desert mountains of Arizona. From what they said, it was meant to be a disciplinary move because of his behavior at home. But instead of working through it as a family, they chose to ship him off into isolation.
So you're probably wondering, what did Chad do? Okay, we're not even going to entertain that stuff, but it's an accumulation of things over years, well before we ever started YouTubing or well before we ever got into social media. And it's reached a point where Chad needs to develop some very basic maturity and skills that he's going to need as an adult.
What kind of maturity were they expecting Chad to magically learn by sending him off to the middle of nowhere with strangers? That's abandonment disguised as discipline. Honestly, this had to be the most irresponsible parenting decision we've seen so far. Ruby and Kevin come across as the kind of couple who would rather outsource their parenting than sit down and connect with their child. It's heartbreaking and infuriating.
So the idea is with wilderness therapy is if you can survive with these peers in the wilderness with nothing more than the clothes on your back and a couple of field supplies, then there's nothing in this world that you can't tackle.
We did give him a choice. The choices were limited. We had like 3 or 4 choices on the table, and we made it clear what our boundaries are as a family, where we're willing to go, and what we would like to see. Our expectations were very clear.
Trust me when I say this, the options Chad was given must have been so bad that choosing a therapy program in the middle of the desert seemed like the best one. Just imagine what the other choices could have been. Maybe he was told he'd only get 1 meal a day for the next 6 months. or that he wouldn't be allowed to leave the house or do anything meaningful, just stuck doing endless chores. Honestly, there's no telling what kind of twisted ideas were running through their minds.
He was like, what is my packing list? Like, what do you pack to go on a wilderness camp? I don't know. I've never done this before. And so I'm like, let me find out. We'll find out. And the guy says, oh, you don't need to bring anything except 36 pair of underwear. When Chad heard it, he was like, I really am going to go live in the desert in my underwear.
It was all a big joke to her, like it was no big deal. But according to what they said, Chad wouldn't even need to pack clothes. The camp would provide what he'd wear once he got there. All he needed to do was bring enough underwear, which pretty much tells you everything. They'd likely be wearing uniforms or assigned clothing at that place. Now, you're probably wondering, what kind of camp was this exactly? Well, let's take a closer look. Ruby and Kevin made a highly controversial decision to send their 14-year-old son to a wilderness therapy program located in the desert mountains of Arizona. The program, believed to be run by the Abusive Foundation, is designed for teens aged 12 to 17 who are struggling with things like defiance, lack of motivation, or family conflict. But this isn't your typical therapy. This one literally throws kids straight into the wild. They have to learn survival skills, go on daily hikes, and spend long periods alone with their thoughts. There are no phones, no internet, and none of the comforts found at home. Just nature, silence, and the expectation to figure things out. According to the Abusive Foundation website, the results of this study suggest that 52% of those discharged from the Abusive program had either no reoccurrence or only a minor reoccurrence of presenting problems. Of those graduates who experienced a reoccurrence, 86% received few, if any, fee-based treatments after leaving Abusive. Additionally, 53% of the parents indicated that the program had a positive effect on their child's attitude. So there's a 52% chance that Chad will become the person his parents want him to be. Regardless of whether or not that happens, there may still be some positive benefit from the experience. Hopefully he doesn't return from the camp traumatized by it.
They provide everything that you need. They do not sleep in tents. They sleep on the bare ground. And
whatever shelter they can
Or
make.
if they can make a shelter, they can sleep in the shelter they make.
See how satisfying it is for Ruby to know that her son would have had a hard time at the camp. Sometimes being too hard on kids isn't always a good thing. These are the kinds of parents their kids will want nothing to do with once they're old enough to leave, because every time they look at their parents, all those traumatic experiences will come flooding back, and they won't want to be reminded of them.
Chad, to be honest, is excited.
No, I'm sure he is not.
No one's forcing him, no one's dragging him. He's actually really looking forward to this based on the conversations that he's had with the counselors already.
You forced him to choose from 4 horrible punishments, and he picked the desert. And now Kevin's out here trying to make it seem like Chad chose to go camping in the middle of nowhere, like it was all his idea. It's not like he had a choice. When every option is awful, picking the least awful one doesn't make it a real decision.
And they said, like, it's like the real wilderness out there. There's snakes, there's bears, there's coyotes, cougars. Like, it's the real deal.
We're not living in ancient times where people are expected to survive in the wilderness or know how to deal with wild animals. That kind of life isn't normal anymore, especially not for a teenager. It feels like sending Chad to that desert program had less to do with his so-called rebellious behavior and more to do with the thrill of putting him through something extreme. They probably wanted to send their kids there all along. They just needed the right excuse to make it happen.
They were saying that the Anasazi way is where nature will reflect back to you the choices that you make. If you choose not to make a shelter, you're just gonna freeze at night. If you choose not to build a fire, or if you choose not to humble yourself and learn how to build a fire out of sticks, then you just eat a very cold, undelicious, unsatisfying meal.
This is what Chad went through, or maybe even worse, all because his parents thought this was the right way to discipline him. Seriously, can someone tell me in the comments, would you ever do this to your kid? Maybe I'm the one not thinking straight or being too nice about it, because this just feels harsh. Help me out here, guys. I need to know if I'm the only one seeing how messed up this is. And to top it all off, Kevin went on to promote the organization. Whether it was a free shout-out or a paid one, who knows?
So, if you're curious and want to learn more, you can search Anasazi Foundation on Google. And And they have a website, lots of YouTube videos. You can check them out and see what they're like. This isn't a sponsored video, but we were very impressed with this program, and this is why we chose to go with this program versus any of the other many wilderness programs out there.
It's starting to allegedly feel like this might have been a sponsored video, like they were either given a free pass to have their kid worked on, paid a little something for their wide audience, or maybe worse. What if Chad was sent there just so they could say later, hey, we tried it and it works, all just to promote the brand? I mean, it could be wrong, but with this couple, honestly, almost anything seems possible. Nothing would surprise me at this point. There's no way you can talk about 8 passengers without mentioning Ruby, and there's no way you can talk about Ruby without bringing up Jodi. Jodi Hildebrandt is a former licensed mental health counselor and the founder of Connections Classroom, a coaching and therapy group centered around strict moral and behavioral teachings. She became known for her intense, authoritarian take on parenting and emotional discipline. In 2022, she formed a close partnership with Ruby, and that's when everything started to get worse.
You just see aggressive behavior. You see a child saying, screw you, and I'll do what I want. That doesn't sound fearful, does it? However, that kind of overt attack is really a big, huge, I call it the blowfish. They blow themselves up so that they can pretend to themselves and to you that they're larger than life, that they've got everything handled, they've got everything figured out, they don't need any help, and the truth is they're scared to death under the surface.
Jodi became Ruby's mentor, business partner, and confidant. But Ruby first teamed up with Jodi for parenting and self-development coaching. Over time, Jodi became more than just a mentor. She became a dominant force in Ruby's life. Jodi's worldview was harsh and black and white, built around strict obedience, sin-based accountability, and moral absolutism.
Our job as parents, your job as a parent, is to know that when you see acting out behavior in any way, shape, or form, connect the dot to this child is unaware of who they are and their value. And part of the reason they're unaware is because of their destructive choices. They keep using their agency to choose distortion, which is deception, rather than truth.
And for Ruby, who is already known for her strict parenting style, Jodi's teaching felt like validation. It gave her the green light to go even harder with her punitive approach, and that's exactly what she did. As Ruby fell deeper under Jodi's influence, she started pulling away from her husband and older kids, eventually moving in with Jodi. Basically, she's saying that she left because she wanted to save her kids.
Save my kids. No amount of money. And I'm telling you, I was making millions. And I left it.
So how is joining Jodi supposed to save her kids? Maybe she went there to learn even stricter parenting methods to inflict on them, as if everything she's done so far isn't already enough.
My kids were being hurt. With entitlement, they were being hurt. With people's advice, and they didn't have a mother up the front saying, I don't care what the world's opinion is. This is the truth, and this is where I stand.
In Ruby's mind, the problem was simple. Her kids needed more discipline, and their struggles were all because they lacked it. She saw Jodi as the only one who could save her, the parenting messiah who would teach her the skills she needed to get her kids back on the right track.
Power exists inside you, and we want you to be here. So please, humble yourself. Become curious about what we're saying.
This whole thing feels like a clown show. 2 completely unhinged women talking about so-called destructive kids. They act like they're some kind of saviors of modern parenting, preaching their extreme methods like it's a holy mission. It's crazy how they expect people to rally behind them and support this twisted version of helping families. And this is why Ruby thought it was the best reason she moved in with Jodi.
I love principles more than my child.
Yikes!
That's a really, and that is the...
It's not a bad thing to have principles and values. In fact, it's great to live by what you believe in. But when someone becomes too rigid and unbending with those beliefs, it can do more harm than good. Ruby is a perfect example of this. She's taken her values and turned them into harsh, unforgiving rules, and anyone who doesn't fall in line, even her own kids, ends up paying the price. Since teaming up with Jodi, Ruby's behavior has only gotten worse. Even in her solo videos, she says things that are just unthinkable. things no loving parent should ever say out loud, let alone on camera.
What you are thinking when you hear Jodi and me talk about making sure you as the parent teach your child about is that you are only responsible for one thing. Forget all of the rest of that to-do list. You are only responsible to teach your child principles of truth so they can show up as a self-governing, high-charactered individual.
So basically, according to Ruby, being a parent means you're not necessarily responsible for anything in your child's life. Not their feeding, not their well-being, not even their basic emotional needs. That's how she justifies starving her kids and ignoring what matters. In her mind, the only thing a parent should focus on is teaching their kids the so-called principles of truth, whatever that means. It sounds like one of those bizarre techniques she picked up from Jodi. Together, Ruby and Jodi launched a video series called Moms of Truth on Instagram and YouTube, where they dished out parenting advice built on strict obedience and harsh discipline. While they constantly push parents to be controlling, they still claim they're not promoting control.
They don't know where the truth is. They don't know who's telling the truth. So, this little boy that you have depends on you, Mom. And I'm hoping that you will be a lioness to protect him.
I hear it from parents all the time. I don't want to be a controlling parent.
Yeah.
And I don't.
Right. Control is not parenting. That's all it is. It's controlling. So no, you don't want to be a controlling parent. And like Ruby just said, I hear this probably every other day. Someone says, I'm afraid that I am controlling. I'm afraid. So if you're afraid, if you say that a lot.
How does that even make sense? Every parent who tries not to be controlling isn't automatically being controlling. Most parents actually want to give their kids some level of freedom, not to spoil them, but to build trust and respect. They know that ruling with fear isn't healthy. Guiding kids through fear isn't real parenting, it's intimidation. And in the long run, that kind of approach does more damage than good. According to Psych Central, fear-based parenting correlates with higher rates of child rebellion, Solo explains. Because the kids rebel against the extreme control that is contrary to a child's growing need for autonomy as they grow up and discover the world. But back to the issue of control over kids, this is Ruby's definition of control.
So we have this idea that controlling parents are parents who make their kids do something that the kids don't want to do. Did you know that a controlling parent is also a parent who doesn't expect anything from their children and allows the child to do whatever they want? That's also a controlling parent.
Saying something like that is honestly ridiculous. How can anyone claim that left and right are the same thing, or that good and bad mean the same? That kind of thinking is confusing and harmful. When a parent gives their child the ability to make choices, that's not being controlling, that's teaching independence and responsibility. The pair went on to promote conflicts in their parenting style.
Moms, dads, you need to be fighting 100% of the time. It's not a battle with your child. This is a battle against the evil that's in the world today.
Yes.
And you need to be battling it every minute of the day.
If parents are constantly fighting their kids 100% of the time, as she puts it, how can there ever be peace in the home? Not everything needs to turn into a battle. Sometimes love, patience, and understanding are the very things that help guide a child in the right direction. I honestly wonder, back when they were making these videos, were there really people who genuinely thought that what they were saying made sense? What could a child possibly do that would make someone believe Ruby and Jodi had the answer? And what's even more frustrating is how extremists like them always try to use God to justify their harsh, twisted beliefs.
There is nothing that you've done or nothing that you think you've done that is outside the reach of God.
But why do people who hold extreme ideas, concepts, and beliefs always seem to try to use God as justification? This user puts it perfectly. Human beings often seek to rationalize behaviors and justify their actions. The use of religion as a core motivation and justification is normal and natural. I do not mind the use of religion to justify decisions that are ethical, selfless, or charitable. That would be praiseworthy. I do mind and strongly object when persons use narrow and parochial interpretations or take passages in religions out of context or ignore other constraints.
Healing you. Nothing. And I could sit here and name all sorts of things that people have done and things that I have done, and nothing is outside that reach of being seen and healed by God.
So how did people react to the videos Ruby and Jodi uploaded on YouTube? Well, let's just say the comment sections weren't exactly filled with praise. One user put it bluntly, Jodi hasn't seen her own children in years. Thankfully, the nerve of her counseling parents. And someone else replied to the comment saying that she was even responsible for running a men's group, counseling them on maintaining their marriages, despite not being able to keep her own marriage together. This ties into the common idea that therapists are often broken people trying to fix other broken people. These are unconfirmed claims about Jodi, but there might be something to them. Here's Jodi at it again. Understanding her background and how she started will give you a glimpse of who she really is.
Thousands of people for 20 years, and I've been asking God about how to help heal them.
Jodi and her psychos like her understand that the vast majority of people are somewhat religious, and capitalizing on this religious sentiment is always their go-to strategy.
To understand how to use principles that are God's in helping people heal.
During all of this, Jodi opened up about her past, saying she grew up in a household where her parents were emotionally unavailable and couldn't meet the needs of her and her 6 siblings. She claimed that she's grown from that experience, that she now understands how it shaped her life, and that she's ready to help others on their own journey of healing. But given everything we've seen, you have to wonder, has she really healed, or is she just passing that pain on to others?
Sure enough, I ended up with an eating disorder, right? I started trying to control everything because I had no outlet to emote my emotions. I had nobody there to validate me and say, yeah, that makes sense that when you're...
Did someone lie to Jodi and tell her she's no longer controlling? Because her entire parenting philosophy revolves around control. She's constantly pushing the idea that parents should have a tight grip on how their kids behave, all under the banner of strict discipline. Jodi also talked about her traumatic childhood and how it affected her deeply. She mentioned working with therapists and trying to heal, but even after all that, she admitted to falling back into harmful patterns, like struggling with an eating disorder. So if she hasn't truly dealt with her own issues, how can she be the one guiding others on how to raise emotionally healthy children?
And I'm like, okay, wait, stop. You missed what I just said to you. And then they'll say to me, are you suggesting that I'm responsible for my depression? And I'll say, yes, you are.
This clearly shows just how damaged Jodi's been since childhood, and it all seems to trace back to how she was raised by her emotionally unavailable parents. That kind of upbringing leaves lasting scars. Sadly, this is exactly the kind of environment Ruby's kids were growing up in, with both Ruby and Kevin being emotionally distant, constantly trying to assert control and showing very little warmth or compassion. Jodi went on to talk about the methods she used in her practice as a licensed mental health therapist, but knowing what we know now, those methods cannot be trusted.
But I still go back into my eating disorder behaviors and control and being really nice and helpful and friendly. I didn't really heal. My soul wasn't healing.
So according to Jodi, people who are depressed are mostly responsible for their depression. In a way, she's not entirely wrong. Sometimes our own choices or actions can lead us down the path. But that's not always the case. There are many times when someone falls into depression because of the pain and trauma caused by other people. It's not always about personal failure. Sometimes it's about surviving what's been done to you. And just when you think the conversation might shift to something more compassionate or balanced, Jodi wraps it all up with religious rhetoric once again.
And I'm like, okay, wait, stop. You missed what I just said to you. And then they'll say to me, are you suggesting that I'm responsible for my depression? And I'll say, yes, you are. Truth? That is emotionally and spiritually sick. I don't know anybody. I don't know thousands of people who have done this. My desire is to spread this throughout the whole entire world.
Basically, Jodi's presenting herself as someone with a method that's spiritually blessed, as if her way is divinely approved. She talks like she's the Messiah, sent by God to deliver this message to the world, and that anyone who listens will be saved by applying her teachings. That's exactly the kind of thing you'd expect from a narcissist or even a dictator, someone who believes their way is the only way. And it's not only outsiders noticing this. Even someone close to Jodi, her own niece, came forward and shared her experience, opening up about what she went through while under Jodi's influence.
I was giving Book of Mormons out at school. I had never done drugs. I had never had anything close to sex. I didn't even know. She was convinced I was also masturbating. I had a masturbation problem. I didn't even know female anatomy people could masturbate. I didn't even know that.
Jodi's niece shared that she was fairly innocent at the time she was with Jodi. But according to her, Jodi made harmful assumptions based on what she believed about girls these days. She assumed that her niece was truly pleasing herself, even though there was no evidence of that.
Things got progressively worse and worse and worse. Because I wasn't getting better, she would say, I'm trying to make you so physically uncomfortable that it forces the sin out. And so that's when she started, had to sleep outside in the snow. That's when I was...
Just imagine if Jodi could do something like that to her niece, someone she knows and is supposed to care about. Then what would she do to a complete stranger? To someone who comes to her as a client, already vulnerable and in need of help? So Jodi would have her niece locked in the office closet, because after being pulled out of school, the niece was living with her and regularly going to the office with Jodi.
She would have me write out my sins on a piece of paper. These sins that I was writing out, I was like, and again, I believed all this. I believed this fully. So I was like, oh, there must be more in me. These are the types of things I'm writing out. And then she would come back in, take that paper, read it to me, make me get on my hands and knees and beg for forgiveness as she read this back to me.
And during that time with Jodi, her niece said she was completely cut off from the rest of her family, even her own mother. Jodi isolated her, making her emotionally dependent and alone. And she did exactly the same thing with Ruby. She pulled Ruby away from her husband and older kids, feeding her different excuses and justifications for why that distancing was necessary. The method was to isolate, control, and then reshape someone under the guise of help.
I cannot be around my mom. I can't ever be around her again, because if she told me the sky was yellow, I would believe her.
As a mental health therapist, Jodi had deep knowledge of the human mind, how people think, feel, and respond. But instead of using that knowledge to help, she used it to manipulate. That kind of behavior is unethical. These are the exact practices that should be rooted out of the mental health field. And sadly, Jodi might not be the only one. There are likely others out there doing the same thing, or even worse, to people who are just looking for help.
I don't know if this is fully true, but from what I understand, she's been diagnosed with many issues, including psychopathy.
We already know that Jodi admitted to struggling with mental health issues while growing up, which she claims is what led her to become a mental health therapist. However, she never shared her official diagnosis, so it's possible she was diagnosed with something like psychopathy. When I checked the definition of psychopathy, it states, psychopathy is characterized by an extreme lack of empathy. Psychopaths may also be manipulative, charming, and exploitative, and behave in an impulsive and risky manner. They may lack conscience or guilt and refuse to accept responsibility for their actions. That describes Jodi perfectly.
She believes this. This is the thing, that she fully believes in her own. She believes that she is inspired by God.
This isn't meant to undermine anyone who's religious. People of faith have every right to believe in and live by their values. It's important to say that individuals like Jodi do not represent the majority of honest, sincere, and mentally sound believers who practice their faith with integrity and love. Her actions are hers alone. They shouldn't be used to judge an entire community.
Her belief is if you watch porn one time, you're an addict. Then you need surgery.
Now, this isn't to say that watching explicit content is good, but if you see porn as one of the worst crimes against humanity, then something's wrong with you. That kind of extreme thinking isn't grounded in reality. According to a clinical and forensic psychologist, Jodi often used her position of power to dominate and control her clients. One of her tactics was convincing them they were addicted, not just in a casual way, but framing it as a deep, sinful addiction. Once she planted that idea, it became easier for her to manipulate and take control.
That Jodi was really adamant about saying everyone is an addict. We heard from another previous client of Jodi's that said, quote, everyone has an addiction. If you try to tell her that you don't have an addiction, she will disagree with you and convince you that you have an addiction.
So after Jodi convinces you that you have an addiction, or what she calls a sin, she then finds a way to cleanse it, whether through regular methods or extreme ones. This process of cleansing is what she refers to as spiritual surgery. And when you look at the bigger picture, It really starts to feel like Jodi has positioned herself as some kind of spiritual leader for the people who follow her system. It's similar to how cult leaders operate, using spirituality or religion as a tool to control, manipulate, and brainwash their followers under the guise of healing.
Ruby is a part of the original 10 women that are being trained to become mental fitness trainers. So Ruby, you want to tell us about what a mental fitness trainer is?
Yes. So we are getting mentally fit the same way your body would get physically fit.
A cult of women trained and ready to be unleashed on the world with their twisted and extreme beliefs and methods. Isn't that something?
Much better.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to span over here. We've got, I can't see.
There we go.
Tori and Sherry. How are you feeling about what you're getting ready to go out and do? Teaching truth to the world.
Excited.
So excited.
Excited.
Yeah.
While Ruby and Jodi were enjoying the fame of their collaboration, Ruby's ties with her husband and older kids were becoming strained, partly because Jodi had somehow convinced her that her family was an obstacle to her personal and spiritual growth. During this time, while still living with Jodi, Ruby kept even Russell with her. Then something happened that changed everything.
911, the address of your emergency. Okay, and the phone number you're calling from. Tell me exactly what's happened.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help.
What happened was heartbreaking. Russell, Ruby's second-to-last baby, had been mistreated and reportedly locked up for a long time. Eventually, he couldn't take it anymore. He gathered the strength to escape from Jodi's home and ran to a neighbor for help. It was that neighbor who called 911 and reported what was going on. And that call ended up exposing everything. It was the beginning of a controversy that shocked the nation.
And he's said he just came from a neighbor's house, and we know there's been problems at this neighbor's house. He's emaciated, he's got tape around his legs, he's hungry, and he's thirsty.
Just imagine what Ruby and Jodi must have been putting these kids through for one of them to run away and cry for help. Why use tape on him? Maybe he was resisting the harsh treatment he was receiving, and Ruby decided it was best to restrict his movement.
Does he seem to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol?
I don't think so, but he's very thirsty, and
Need an ambulance?
I don't think he needs an ambulance. I'll let the cops decide that, but his ankles are taped up, and he won't tell us why.
Okay.
But he has duct tape around each ankle. Yeah, there's sores around him. I think there's a good chance he's been...
He also said...
Oh, and he has them around his ankles. I mean, his wrists as well. Okay, this boy has been... He needs... This kid has obviously been... I think he's been detained. He's obviously covered in wounds.
According to Joni, the duct tape was meant for something else.
We knew that Jodi does this. We knew 14, almost 15 years ago that she's already done this to me. And people saw and people witnessed and did nothing. She made me sleep outside in the snow. She duct taped me. I wasn't allowed to speak to anyone.
I can't help but wonder how Jodi was able to get away with all of this back then, and why nothing was done to get justice for her niece. Maybe no one believed her when she spoke out, or maybe people thought it was all just part of the healing process, because Jodi was seen as the expert, the authority figure. When someone holds that kind of power and is trusted blindly, it's easy for real harm to be ignored or dismissed as therapy.
Parenting ideas, that all comes from Jodi. That is 100% the therapeutic ideas of Jodi Hildebrandt.
Now let's get back to the 911 call. In August of 2023, around 10:50 a.m., Russell, desperate, hungry, and afraid, climbed out of a window at Jodi's home in Evans, Utah. He was malnourished, injured, and had duct tape around both his ankles and wrists. It was later discovered that the boy's wounds were treated with cayenne pepper and honey, a homemade remedy that worsened the pain. He made his way to a neighbor's house, knocked on the door, and begged for food and water. He told them he had escaped after being tied up. The neighbor was horrified. Russell had open wounds, looked extremely thin, and was weak and traumatized. This heartbreaking scene is what led to the 911 call you heard earlier. Eventually, the police arrived.
Jodi?
I need you to step out.
I have my turn.
That's great. Step out of the house.
No, I'm not going to step out of the
Step
house.
out of the house. Step out of the house.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
We're just going to see if anybody else. Is there anybody else home?
Wait a minute, how do you come to my house?
Right there.
They come into my house.
As Jodi was being taken out of the house, she refused to cooperate with the police. Her main concern wasn't the child in distress, it was whether the officers had a search warrant to enter her home. But in urgent situations like this, where a child's safety is at risk, law enforcement can act immediately without waiting for a warrant. And what they found inside was truly disturbing. During the search, officers discovered Eve, Ruby's youngest daughter, sitting cross-legged in a closet, alone, hidden away, and completely silent.
Hi, I'm a police officer. Are you going to the union here? Hey, you okay? Is it just you in here? I'm Sergeant Tobler. What's your name?
She looked thin and traumatized, just sitting there in silence, not saying a word. No one knows exactly how long Eve had been locked in that closet, or even why she was put there in the first place. But one thing's clear. This is what Jodi does to her victims, and Ruby willingly handed her children over, treating them like lab rats in Jodi's experiment.
You okay? Huh? You doing okay? You don't want to talk to me? Yeah, that's okay. Can you come with me, though?
This was sad to watch. Thank goodness for Russell's bravery. He found the strength to escape and ask the neighbor for help. At the time, he was already in the hospital receiving treatment for his injuries. Meanwhile, officers said Eve was too afraid to speak when they found her. She just sat there, frozen in fear. She probably believed that if she moved from that spot, Jodi would punish her even more when she returned. The police didn't want to force her to get up. They didn't want to add to her trauma. So they spoke to her gently, trying to calm her down. One of the officers even brought her food and let her eat right there in the closet, just to make her feel safe. Even after she ate, more than an hour later, Eve still didn't want to stand up. She had likely been given strict instructions by Jodi, probably something like, "Don't move until I say so." And that fear was still gripping her even with Jodi gone. She was too scared to disobey, even though help had arrived. The officers took turns gently trying to talk to her, hoping to get her to speak or at least stand so they could take her out of the house. It wasn't just physical captivity, it was psychological.
So can we carry you from there? It's the arrangements. My garments. Pinky garments. We helped your brother. And we got him some help too.
When Eve finally spoke, her voice was so soft it was barely audible. It took hours of gentle reassurance and convincing from the officers before she felt safe enough to move. After nearly 4 hours of back and forth, Eve finally stood up and stepped out of the closet. She was immediately taken to the hospital for treatment and a full checkup. Not long after, both Ruby and Jodi were arrested and taken to the station.
Are you back for me? Perfect. And then
When Ruby was questioned, she said little to nothing. No emotion, no regret, and certainly no pity for what her children had just gone through. She wasn't just aware of what was happening, she was part of it.
you want to talk to me about where you live or how many kids you have? So we just spoke with your husband and he said you guys have 6 kids. Are those all?
Ruby just sat there silently staring blankly like a zombie. It's possible that Jodi had already contacted her before the arrest, warned her about the police raid, and told her not to say a word to avoid incriminating herself. After a long stretch of refusing to answer any of the officers' questions, Ruby finally spoke, but not to explain or defend herself. Instead, she asked for a lawyer. Not a single word about her children, not a trace of concern or guilt.
I'll wait till I have a lawyer. Okay. So you don't talk to us at all?
The officer got tired of pressing the issue and left Ruby to go speak with Jodi, who then talked to the officers.
How long you lived here in Islands? 11 minutes?
6 years.
6 years? The same house? Wow. You married? Single?
Even though Jodi spoke to the police, she wasn't cooperative when it came to discussing the kids or the crimes she was accused of. She insisted that she needed her lawyer present before saying anything to them.
I'd love to tell you if he were here, because I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with what I say. You know, I'm a psychologist. I've watched people flip things all the time, so I get it. I sit on your side.
While Jodi was in jail, she made several phone calls, all of which were recorded. What stood out the most was her complete lack of pity or remorse for what she and Ruby had put those kids through. There was no reflection. Instead, she seemed to view the entire situation as some kind of setup or conspiracy against her. In her mind, it wasn't about the harm done, it was about her being targeted.
Adults have a really hard time understanding that children can be full of evil and what that takes to fight it. You've seen what it takes to fight evil. It's not the person you're fighting, and it can look.
This was still on the very day she was arrested, and even then Jodi truly believed that her children are full of evil, and that fighting that so-called evil is what led to her arrest. In her mind, she wasn't doing anything wrong, she was doing what she believed was righteous. Just like her niece said earlier, Jodi genuinely believes all the extreme things she says. She's not putting on a show for attention, she truly sees her twisted ideas as the ultimate truth. And that's what makes her so dangerous.
And I don't know if I'm going to be like some kind of example, but when I get out of here, I have a story to tell, and I'm going to try to do everything I can to protect the children, because that's what's happening, is that kids are being just horribly abused.
This woman is an absolute psycho. What children is she even claiming to protect? Her own children have distanced themselves from her after everything she put them through. And now, after badly mistreating and abusing Ruby's kids, she dares to talk about fighting for children who are being abused? It's infuriating. She talks like a savior while acting like the villain. And then out of nowhere, she breaks down crying. But it wasn't about the kids, it was about her. Her tears were for herself, not for the lives she damaged.
Nobody wants the truth. Nobody wants the truth. Nobody wants the truth, because these kids, I told Doug, I woke up, the Spirit told me, it's all the devil. I mean, you've seen him. I mean, I've known you, for 5 years? You've watched him come at me, come at me, come at me, come at me.
I honestly don't understand how anyone can look at kids so full of innocence, curiosity, and potential and see evil in them. Yes, kids can be rebellious sometimes, that's part of growing up. But you don't turn that into some twisted belief that they're possessed or evil incarnate. That's exactly what Jodi believes. She thinks she's fighting some righteous battle against darkness, and somehow the darkness just happens to be kids. She then went on a full rant, trying to justify everything she's done to those children. Just her defending her cruelty as if it were some holy mission.
And he uses all of us as the adults, the parents, that don't hold the kids accountable. So now it's abusive to make a kid sleep on the floor. It's abusive. Or it's abusive to, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
What's truly ridiculous is that Jodi believes letting a child sleep on the bare floor is normal. Starving a kid and locking them in a closet is a perfectly acceptable form of punishment. That duct taping a child's hands and feet is somehow a loving way to correct behavior. It's a crazy upside-down way of thinking. Even Ruby eventually turned on Jodi in her phone call, and that moment made the case a lot easier for prosecutors. When you've got two suspects who were once working side by side and suddenly they're no longer on the same page, it's game over. The cracks in their alliance were exactly what the prosecution needed.
And it's embarrassing too, just repeat it. It's like, oh my gosh, how gullible was I? Oh my gosh, how much power I gave this person, and I didn't see it.
Jodi, on the other hand, continued talking about her Bible-related rhetoric.
That 1 Peter chapter 4 was another one of the footnotes to refer to, that reinforced all this other stuff. I'm like, okay, this isn't just some crazy, random event. This has purpose.
Yes, this isn't some random event. It happened because you and your partner in crime, Ruby, were mistreating young kids who are supposed to be in your care. So yes, you're right to be sitting there, because the whole point of all of this is to make sure you spend the rest of your life behind bars. And the crazy thing is that Jodi thought all of this was a good idea, just so she could spread the gospel.
You will be a great tool in the hand of the Lord in teaching the gospel to many. So this whole paragraph about an example, an example, an example, I'm like, well, what's a better example than to go to prison unjustly and then go teach the gospel, like.
So deep down, she probably knows that what she's doing isn't acceptable, not by any normal standard, and that she could end up in prison right where she belongs. And I doubt she'll have the time or peace to keep spreading the gospel behind bars. In prison, people who abuse or hurt kids are usually treated the worst. Her time there won't be as easy or holy as she might think. Reality's gonna hit hard. This person framed it perfectly, saying, even prisoners have a moral code. They don't see themselves as evil. Most folks in prison see themselves as people who got a raw deal. The crimes they committed out of necessity. Sometimes that necessity is the poverty of their youth. The crimes they committed against other adults who had it coming. There is no way to frame this argument in a way that works for people who abuse children. Prisoners see these people as the real criminals. And she deserves every bad thing that comes her way. Just look at the condition Russell was in.
How did you get the ropes on you?
The kid looked absolutely terrible. Just imagine, Jodi claims she wants to save kids. Is this what saving them looks like? It's hard to believe she thinks this is helping. And then there's Kevin. Where has he been in all of this? What was his role before the arrest, and what has he done since? There are so many questions about how much he knew and how involved he really was. Like we mentioned earlier, Jodi's influence on Ruby had a major impact on her marriage. By 2022, things had gotten so bad that Kevin moved out of the family home and separated from Ruby, even though they were still legally married at the time. Their relationship had broken down, at least temporarily, and Jodi was right at the center of it.
I've been in a separation.
From who?
From my wife and family.
What's your wife's name?
Ruby.
Franke.
Kevin confirmed that he hadn't seen or spoken to his children in over a year. The last time he had any contact with them was back in July 2022, when Ruby asked him to leave the house due to marital issues and his personal struggles with what she called addictions, including pornography. Since then, he's been completely cut off.
And some of my own addictions that I was working through and seeking help on with pornography.
And since then, he's been working on himself and making sure to support the family financially.
Are you aware of how she disciplines the kids or how she handles the kids with behavioral issues or anything like that?
No.
Are you aware of the physical condition of your children?
No. I've chosen to trust my wife with the children. That was part of the agreement of our separation.
There's a lot wrong with what he said so far. First of all, he hadn't been in contact with his kids for over a year, and that alone is wrong. On top of that, knowing how Ruby usually treated the kids, he should have at least tried to check in from time to time just to make sure they were okay. But instead, he claimed he had no idea what was going on. It's hard to believe he was completely clueless.
Said I know nothing that's going on in their lives or anything going on.
That doesn't sound like a responsible father at all. Sure, I get it, providing for your kids financially is important, and Kevin made sure to do that. But support goes way beyond money. Even if he was dealing with his own struggles, he still should have found the time, even if just once a month or every other month, to check in and see how his kids were doing. And as you probably guessed, it was Jodi who played a big role in helping Ruby push Kevin out of the picture. Another move that gave her more control and left the kids with no one truly looking out for them.
Jodi and Ruby have a close relationship, and Jodi saw the need for me to get help. And frankly, I agree. This space has been exactly what I need to face, my own addictions and.
Remember what we talked about earlier, Jodi's tactic of labeling everything as an addiction or a sin? Well, she pulled the same move on Kevin to push him out of the picture. If his supposed addiction was really that serious, why wasn't he getting help somewhere close by, where he could still be present for his wife and kids? Why did Jodi's solution involve cutting off all contact with his family? It's like she got into his head so deeply that he truly started to believe he had an addiction. And who knows, maybe it wasn't even as serious as Jodi made it seem. This gave Jodi full access. Turns out, Kevin wasn't fully aware of what was happening to his children.
12 to 13-year-old boy was knocking on doors in a neighborhood asking for food and water, that he was severely emaciated, that he had...
What is emaciated?
Skinny, scrawny, malnutritioned, not enough food, not enough water to sustain life.
This interrogation took place on the same day Russell escaped from Jodi's home, and it's pretty clear from the footage that Kevin had no real idea what had been happening. He looked genuinely confused and caught off guard. He had just returned after hearing that Ruby had been arrested.
He had duct tape on his extremities, on his hands, on his ankles, and those were covering rope burns that were used to tie him down. Take a second and think about what I just said. That's the condition of your son.
It was probably at this moment that Kevin's whole view of Jodi began to shift. You can only imagine what was going through his mind as he sat there, hearing about what had been done to his son. He looked shaken, thinner than before when they were all together making annoying contents on YouTube, likely worn down from dealing with the weight of the so-called porn addiction diagnosis Jodi had placed on him. He had been holding on to hope that he'd get better and eventually return to his wife and kids. That was the agreement when he was sent away. He even shared that he still had feelings for Ruby.
What's going to happen? It's my wife. I love my wife.
I don't know. I'm being honest with you. I don't know. Haven't had an interview with you.
I don't think those charges against my wife.
Possibly.
Kevin knew things weren't going to end well for his wife. And while some people on social media have criticized and even mocked him for still having feelings for Ruby, it's important to remember he's human. He was still in love with his wife. At the time, he had no idea what had been happening while he was away. The home he once knew, the family he had hoped to return to, was falling apart in front of him. His kids were finally in good hands, and that gave him some relief. But emotionally, he was struggling with what would happen to Ruby. In that moment, he likely believed Jodi was the main person behind it all, and that Ruby was just caught up in it, maybe manipulated or misled.
And not without legal representation.
Yeah, all right, I get it.
But I love that wife, and I trust my wife. And so, I mean, this feels like getting run over by a steam truck while you're sharing with me today.
Yeah, I can tell you're caught off guard.
I thought I was just coming here to pick up my kids, and for what, I don't know what or why, but...
Here's where Kevin admitted to missing his family and working his ass off so he could be well enough to return to them.
You realize that I have a picture of my family on my wall, and I look at it every day, and I work every day. I have no idea what you're talking about.
The story quickly made international headlines and went viral across social media. For many viewers who had long criticized Ruby's harsh parenting style on YouTube, it felt like validation. In response, YouTube took action, deleting both Ruby's 8-passenger channel and the Connections channel, citing violations of its creator responsibility policy. According to the arrest report, the home was a place of strict parenting and was also described as a site of torture and deprivation. As a result, both Ruby and Jodi were each charged with 4 to 6 counts of aggravated child abuse.
The state respectfully requests that the court sentence Ms. Franke to consecutive prison terms for each of the 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. This sentence was agreed to by Ms. Franke in her plea agreement and is also recommended by adult probation and parole.
The charges included several serious counts of aggravated child abuse, including causing serious physical injury, starvation, or manipulation that put the child's life at risk, severe emotional harm, and even abuse that can lead to developmental delays or intellectual disabilities, among others. During the hearing, Ruby appeared emotional and remorseful. She was visibly upset, even tearing up as she admitted to some of her wrongdoings. But she wasn't taking full responsibility. Instead, she shifted much of the blame onto her so-called mentor, Jodi, painting her as the driving force behind it all.
For the past 4 years, I've chosen to follow counsel and guidance that has led me into a dark delusion. My distorted version of reality went largely unchecked as I would isolate from anyone who challenged me. I was led to believe that this world was an evil place.
It really makes you wonder, why didn't Ruby realize any of this while she was still with Jodi? Why didn't she see how badly her kids were being treated before the arrest? Personally, I don't believe for a second that she's suddenly seen the light. Even before Jodi came into the picture, Ruby had already a troubling approach to parenting. Jodi didn't change her, she just gave Ruby the push to fully unleash what was already inside her. It's no mistake that Ruby seemed perfectly fine with everything that was happening to her kids. If they were not caught, she wouldn't be sorry. And then, during the hearing, she said what many of us already knew was coming, the obvious and the inevitable.
It is important to me to demonstrate my remorse and regret without blame. I take full accountability for my choices, and it is my preference that I serve a prison sentence.
There was really no way out for Ruby and Jodi. The evidence gathered by the state and prosecutors was more than enough to bury them both without much effort. So honestly, it was a smart move by Ruby's legal team to have her plead guilty and show some remorse, all in hopes of getting a lighter sentence. Then came the courtroom performance, the fake tears, the emotional breakdown, all for show. It was all about creating the effect.
You were not the ones who were doing the brainwashing. Thank you to my Bishop Tom Hawks and my state president Jim Nelson for reminding me of the Lord's love for the lost.
If there's one thing I've learned about Ruby from that moment she started her YouTube and posting on other platforms, is that she's not a bad actor. She knows exactly what to say to spark outrage and boost engagement. And she also knows how to stage those sweet emotional moments that connect with her audience. So this courtroom breakdown felt like a performance to me. I honestly doubt she feels any real remorse for what she's done. Because how do you look at the way your kids were treated, starved, locked up, traumatized, and then claim you were brainwashed into thinking it was good for them? She's just as guilty as Jodi. As for Jodi, she claimed to be sorry in her own way, but she didn't show any real emotion, whether acted or genuine. It was cold and detached. Meanwhile, the prosecutor laid it all out, painting a clear, heartbreaking picture of what those kids went through.
The children were regularly denied food, water, beds to sleep in, and virtually all forms of entertainment. They were isolated from others and were hidden when people came to visit the house. They were forced to do physical tasks, like carrying loaded boxes up and down stairs and doing wall sits or sitting against a wall without assistance of a chair or stool for hours at a time. They were forced to do manual labor outdoors in the extreme summer heat, often without shoes or socks. They were also forced to stand outside on a cement patio in the summer heat for hours and even days. They were beaten, and the 12-year-old was regularly bound hand and foot after he attempted to run away in mid-July.
No adult deserves to go through something this awful, let alone a young child. It's no surprise those kids looked absolutely broken when they were finally rescued. The pain, the fear, the neglect, it was written all over them. And the sad truth is, no matter how much healing they go through, this traumatic chapter will leave scars that stay with them for the rest of their lives.
The injuries from the binding are particularly bad. In addition to the physical abuse, the children were emotionally abused. They each believed to some degree that they deserved what was being done to them.
This is exactly why, when the police came to take Eve, she couldn't bring herself to stand up for hours. She was hesitant, scared, and completely shut down. These kids had been mentally broken, brainwashed, and punished so severely that their entire perception of reality had shifted. They didn't know what safety felt like anymore. To them, obedience meant survival, and anything outside of that was terrifying.
After being caught, Ms. Hildebrandt has shown little to no remorse for her actions. In telephone conversations that will be provided in full to the Board of Pardons and Parole, and which she knew to be recorded, she's repeatedly claimed that she is the victim and the children are the perpetrators.
Even as the charges were being read out, Jodi still didn't believe that what was happening to her was justified. In fact, it was reported that in some of her recorded phone calls, She claimed that everything that will be said about her in court will be full of lies. What's truly baffling is that she said all of this while knowing her calls were being recorded. Why she would make those kinds of statements so openly is beyond me. It's hard to understand what was going through her mind, whether it was arrogance, denial, or something else entirely.
I am willing to submit to what the state feels would be an appropriate amount of time served to make retribution.
A lot of the reactions in the comments section weren't in Jodi's favor. One user put it perfectly. She's not sorry for the children, she's just sorry she got caught. And that's assuming she's even sorry at all. Because from the way she speaks and carries herself, it doesn't seem like she's let go of her crazy ideology. It might look like regret, but deep down, she's still clinging to the same beliefs. About 2 weeks after Ruby and Jodi were arrested, Ruby's sister Bunny came forward with a public statement. She reacted to the situation, expressing her shock and disappointment, and made it clear that she wanted to distance herself from Ruby's actions.
I know that my words will be used against me. I also know that my words may help people understand me a little. I can only speak for myself, and I will only be speaking for myself.
It was all me, me, me. There was barely any mention of the harm done to the kids. If you're going to address something as serious as what your sister did, the very least you can do is start with some sympathy or concern for the children involved. But instead, her statement felt like it was all about her, how she was affected, how she felt, and how she wanted to be seen. Another thing that stood out was the video's length. It was just a bit over the 8-minute mark, the minimum time needed to qualify for full monetization on YouTube. It seems she was trying to benefit from the attention and make sure the video brought in revenue. You see a lot of influencers do this, stretching videos just to meet that mark, and in a situation this serious, it came off as opportunistic.
I spent the first week in complete shock, where I felt my body and my mind and my emotions were completely paralyzed because of the just absolute shock of all of this.
Another thing about the video, it just felt robotic. The way she looked into the camera, her facial expressions, the awkward pauses, it looked like she was reading something off a screen and struggling to get through it. It didn't feel genuine at all. On top of that, there were multiple cuts and frame switches throughout the video, which made it obvious that it was pre-recorded and heavily edited. It was clearly polished to look good for viewers rather than coming from a place of real emotion or concern.
I am mad. I am mad at what has happened. I am beyond.
You don't look mad, my dear. All you're doing is trying to distance yourself from the fallout of what happened with your sister. If you really wanted to handle this gracefully, silence would have been the better option, at least at that time.
It makes me tremble. It makes me tremble because it is unheard of. It's truly unbelievable. Something that I pride myself on, something that I enjoy doing is being transparent.
You don't come out and say things like this when your own sister is at her lowest, even if she's in the wrong. There's a time to speak and there's a time to just be still. And we all know why Bonnie made that video. She also runs a family vlog on YouTube, and she probably thought staying silent might hurt her image or her brand if people started to link her to Ruby. But the truth is that's pretty unlikely. Most people who follow Bonnie probably already know the difference between her and Ruby's parenting styles. So this whole statement is unnecessary at the time. Give me a break. What utter nonsense. It honestly pisses me off when creators start fake crying on camera like we don't see right through it. It's all just for show. And the sad part is some viewers actually fall for those crocodile tears. That's why they keep doing it. One commenter even said, "So proud of you for speaking up and holding Kevin accountable as well." But the issue isn't that she spoke up, it's why she spoke up. It feels like she's trying to take advantage of her sister's downfall, using it for views, sympathy, or to clean up her own image. Her delivery screams manipulation. And as for her saying she had no idea what Ruby was doing to those kids, that might actually be true.
We did not know what they were doing.
Even though she
Because,
said
like
she
you
didn't know
said,
what was happening.
we were
She also
cut
said
off.
Sherry told her some things,
We
and
did
according
not
to her,
have access
she did what she could to help the
anyone.
kids.
It wasn't until about a year ago when we were able to reconnect with Sherry. And it was then that we were learning slowly bits and pieces of more. And that's where the part of behind the scenes, we did everything that we could. We did everything legally.
So yeah, based on what she said, she clearly knew something was going on when Sherry came to her for help and shared what was happening. Whether Bonnie really did everything she could to help, no one knows for sure. And it's also not clear if she was talking about what happened to Eve and her brother at Jodi's place, or the way Sherry and the other siblings were treated back when they all lived together.
One person that could have done something within his legal right was Kevin. We had zero contact with him. It was Kevin's job to check in on things, and he did not.
It's fair to say that Kevin, as the father, should have done more to check on the kids. But what Bonnie doesn't seem to acknowledge is that Kevin was also under Jodi's influence, and there was an agreement in place. He wasn't supposed to come back until he had worked through his addiction. That's not an excuse, but it is part of the situation. Bonnie not being under Jodi's control may have had more clarity, so the real question is, did she ever try to reach out to Kevin? And why didn't Sherry share anything with him? While many people in the comments seem to support Bonnie's decision to fully blame Kevin for failing as a father, one user made a valid point. Anyone who watched 8 Passengers should not be surprised that Kevin let his family down. He seemed like a passive, detached father and husband. How do you go 13 months without seeing or even talking to your 4 children, who were clearly being held hostage by a mother under the control of a very sick woman? That's something I mentioned earlier too. Kevin never really seemed to be assertive in the home. He mostly just followed Ruby's lead, and in the end that passiveness came at a great cost. In February 2024, Ruby Frank stood before a judge at the 5th District Court in St. George, Utah to hear her fate. She was sentenced to 4 back-to-back prison terms, each ranging from 1 to 15 years, for the 4 counts of aggravated child abuse she had pleaded guilty to.
The state respectfully requests that the court sentence Ms. Franke to consecutive prison terms for each of the 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. This sentence was agreed to by Ms. Franke in her plea agreement and is also recommended by adult probation and parole.
Jodi Hildebrandt, Ruby's co-defendant and close partner in all of this, got the exact same sentence, 4 prison terms of 1 to 15 years. Since the sentences are consecutive, they have to finish one before starting the next. Even though the full sentence could add up to 60 years, Utah law caps it at 30. Still, both women must serve at least 4 years before they can even be considered for parole. Lately, over the past few months, Ruby's husband and kids have been speaking out in interviews, sharing what they went through during those difficult and confusing times. Sherry, Ruby's oldest daughter, also came forward to tell her side of the story.
When I was younger, around like 5, 6, like Ruby was really physical, like, you know, whether it was like a slap to the lip or a slap to the cheek. When I would practice the piano, you know, like her hand would slam and like it was really scary. And honestly, when she met Jodi, that kind of stopped.
There were always signs that Ruby could be a bit aggressive and physical with how she parented. It happened from time to time, but never seemed like it's too much or going out of hand until Jodi came into the picture. After that, Ruby completely stopped being physical with her kids, which may have just been another way to manipulate them and gain approval. And it worked, but leaving the physical discipline was just a way to give in to a new system of discipline.
You feel the shift when Jodi came into your family's life?
I could for sure. I could feel the shift. I was like, oh, Jodi, like, you know, I don't like her, but maybe this is one good thing that's come from it, is she's not yelling, she's not hitting us anymore. But it did become more psychological, and in a way that was more damaging to me.
There are some forms of psychological punishment and emotional abuse that can be even worse than physical abuse. According to a source, all abuse is inherently emotional abusive. When you hit a child or person, there is no doubt they suffer mentally. Emotional abuse is just as damaging and severe to a person's well-being as physical and sexual abuse. To be clear, emotional abuse is often used interchangeably with mental abuse, but there is a distinction. Emotional abuse refers to any behavior that targets a person's psychological well-being, including their self-esteem, self-control, and individuality.
Were they romantically involved with each other?
I never saw anything specific about that.
Do you think they were more than friends?
I'm not sure.
It was honestly weird. Jodi controlled Ruby, and she invaded her privacy and even the privacy of her kids. This all started not long before she convinced Ruby to send their dad away to deal with what many believe was a made-up addiction, far from his family. Jodi tore apart a once-united home, all to make Ruby more dependent on her. That might be why Ruby ended up moving in with her. After Ruby's arrest, Sherry went through her mom's messages with Jodi and noticed signs that their relationship had gone beyond just work. It seemed physical. But in the interview, Sherry didn't say much more about it.
I certainly got weird vibes from Jodi and Ruby. I don't think it's normal at all that a therapist would move into her client's home. I was moving out to college and I hadn't even left the house yet, and she is in my room and in my bed.
But when Sherry was asked if she believed her mom was truly sorry for everything she had done to the family, even after all the tears and emotions in court, she seemed unsure. Sherry was skeptical about the breakdown.
So I think that she probably genuinely believed everything she said. I don't believe it, though.
With this new sense of purpose, Sherry has been using her voice to speak up for children's rights, especially when it comes to kids being used in online content. She believes there is no right way to include kids in videos when they're not old enough to give proper consent. In her view, it can cause serious harm later in life. And when she was asked if she could ever forgive Ruby for everything she did to her and her siblings, here's what she had to say.
Have you forgiven Ruby?
Forgiveness is something I've had to study a lot and kind of think about what it means. But for me, forgiveness would look like not letting that consume every moment of my life and all of my thoughts.
And moving forward, Sherry has decided to keep her life much more private than how things were when she was growing up in the spotlight with her family.
I've been able to choose now what parts of my life I choose to share with the public and what I don't.
Sherry also stood by something I've always believed, that Ruby is just as bad as Jodi. Jodi didn't force Ruby to become who she was. She simply gave Ruby the excuse, the reasoning, no matter how twisted, to go to extremes with her kids.
A lot of narratives in the media kind of pinpoint Jodi as the reason that things went wrong and Ruby was good until Jodi came. But I wanted to show that that wasn't the case and that wasn't my experience.
Sherry went on to share that she didn't fully realize how bad things were at home until she left for college. Being away gave her a new perspective and helped her see just how unhealthy and controlling the environment really was.
It wasn't until I left for college that I, started looking up, what is a cult? What is spiritual abuse? What is emotional abuse? And it kind of all checked the boxes with things that Ruby had done.
Sherry explained that while she used to feel distant from her dad, things have changed a lot since everything happened. She now sees him as an important part of her life and has been working on rebuilding the relationship. Even though he wasn't the one who directly hurt them, she acknowledged that a lot of what happened did happen under his watch, and that's something they're still working through together. But she made it clear that she values having him back in her life and is open to healing and moving forward.
That relationship is really important to me, and that broke my heart to be kind of disowned by that and not be able to speak to him.
The whole thing is a tangled web of hurt and disappointment. Sherry claimed that she does not want to have contact with her mother again. In her memoir, The House of My Mother, Sherry wrote that in July 2022, her dad Kevin told her Ruby had invited him to leave the family home so he could work on personal addiction. He said he'd be gone for at least a year and asked Sherry not to contact him or her brother Chad. Instead, he encouraged her to use that time to reconnect with Ruby and her younger siblings. Kevin made it clear that reaching out would be selfish, a message pushed heavily by Ruby and Jodi's coaching. Kevin recently talked about getting back on his feet.
Life right now for me is getting back into I would say a comfortable normal. There's still a lot of pain, there's still a lot of healing that I work on each day.
Chad shared something really honest and emotional. He said that even though his mom caused a lot of pain and chaos in their family, he still misses having a mother figure in his life. He doesn't miss the hurt or the harsh way she treated them, but he does miss the idea of a mom, the comfort, the presence, the connection. It's complicated, but it shows that deep down, he still holds on to the good memories, even while acknowledging how much damage was done.
It's hard, of course, but I mean, when I go home, I feel like, no one's missing. I don't really feel like I wish Mom was here. I don't really have those feelings really at all.
The whole house would have felt completely different without Ruby in it. She was the boss, the one in charge, and whatever she said was the final word. Even Kevin, her husband, always went along with whatever she decided was best for the family. But after all the pain and trauma the family went through over the years, it's a relief to see that they finally have a chance to heal. Now the younger kids can grow up in a more caring, supportive, and loving home, something they've needed for a long time.